Welcome to the Living Centred podcast, a podcast all about learning together how to live lives which are centred on Jesus. Everyone lives centred on something. Our goal is to learn together how every area of our lives, everything about who we are and how we live, can be increasingly oriented around Jesus and transformed by Jesus. He invites us to a rich and satisfying life, where the good news that he truly is enough changes everything about how we relate to God, ourselves, and the world. In each episode, a different person shares about what it's looking like for them to seek to centre their life on Jesus right now. As we hear their stories, we get to learn together and to encourage one another in what it means for Jesus to be at the centre of our lives. This is a journey we are all invited to, and a conversation we all get to be a part of. Thanks for joining us.
It is my privilege to introduce today Faith, who will be sharing with us this week. Faith, it is good to see you.
It's good to see you, Adrian.
Oh, I wonder whether we could just start by you just telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what your life looks like.
Yeah, that's such a big question it's like, who am I? It's like, how do I phrase that? So I guess I'll try to be pragmatic.
Good. Yeah.
So
that is a big question.
I am a doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham in the Department of Theology and Religion. And I'm researching Christian doctrine and specifically in conversation with feminist theologies, Pentecostal theology, and trauma theory. So, it's systematic theology. So it's an understanding of the doctrines of the church, but in a way that incorporates people's lived experiences and experiences of trauma. So very much a look at the an embodied understanding of our doctrines, like how we live them. It's because doctrine isn't just like a word for the academy that doesn't touch people's lives, and trying to make that real in my work. And my other role right now is I'm co-director of an organization called Red Letter Christians UK, which is a relational network of Christians who are devoted to the work of Jesus and justice across the UK. And so kind of providing a network for people to connect up who are already doing that type of work and who are curious about what would it mean to live out our Jesus's call in a justice-centered way in our communities.
That is amazing. I always find it exciting talking to you, Faith, and hearing kind of what you're about. I think your doctorate work is just something, each time I hear it, becomes a little bit clearer in my head. And just think it's just so important and so exciting to hear what you're doing in that whole realm. And I think the Red Letter Christians, in terms of that call to say, okay, Jesus and justice, how can this partner and work together? And what should it look like? Is just, it's provocative. It is in a right sense. So thank you. And I guess, we dive straight into the big question. After a big question to start off with of who are you? The next big question is, what does living centered on Jesus look like for you right now?
Yeah. So I was reading through this, and honestly, right now it kind of looks like a challenge. You had seen me a couple weeks ago at a very challenging point. I was doing some work related to my doctorate for an academic article and feeling really overwhelmed. And you really helpfully prayed for me during that. And so I think I can fall into like a kind of irony in the work that I do, because my doctoral work is about Jesus. And activist work, the work of Jesus and justice, again, is about Jesus.
Yeah.
But there are ways that I, and I guess others, can fall into doing that in ways that somehow he isn't leading it. And we feel like, oh, okay, well, so this is about him. But this is my work and this is what I need to do. And I found, like a couple weeks ago when you saw me just feeling really exhausted and struggling, I feel like I wasn't being centered at that point, just because it was like there was so much of my own personal story in that work that I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to take it on myself, like, well, Jesus, you gave me this work to do. it was really a strain. And you actually, you said something when you were praying for me. You were like, let this not be a burden to her, but let her remember like why she's doing this work. And I
Mm.
think that was an important reminder. So for
Wow.
me, yeah, what living centered on Jesus, um, looks like right now is remembering that that's what I'm supposed to be. Because
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, and in the work of activism, I'm not doing activism work myself right now with the doctorate work, but I have in the past. And I've noticed there can be a mindset among Christian activists who think, and I'm including myself in this. So, like, well, we're Jesus's hands and feet in the world, and we're called to live out his work. But
yeah,
then sometimes, like, it looks maybe the way we would like it to look,
mm,
if we don't like come back to the center and have a really
yeah.
deeply centered spiritual life. So, yeah.
Oh, that is incredibly helpful, Faith. And just
Mm.
thank you for just being vulnerable, really, because I think it is that reality that sometimes um, we can get so caught up in the being, and the
Mm.
being stuff can just, or the doing rather, just the doing
Yeah.
stuff. The
Yeah.
doing of the things in the end becomes the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we can, it seems really good as well. And some of the things we're
Yeah.
doing are really good, but
Yeah.
the really good can sometimes just get missed with just, yeah, where's, like, am I encountering and understanding more of who Jesus is through this? And
Mm.
is it about him? I think is deeply provocative. I find in terms of what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
and am I allowing him to lead me? And I guess I think
Mm.
lots of people would find that, of just that reality of, okay, there's this stuff of just doing, and
Mm.
like how do I ensure that, as you said, that centered life is still the way I'm living,
Mm.
centered on Jesus. I guess, which brings me to my next question, is like, what helps you then in doing
Mm.
that?
So what helps me is having a really deep spiritual life. Like I'd always had a practice, even before
Mm,
I was Christian. I spent a good period of my life where I wasn't Christian. Before I would go to bed, I would pray.
hmm,
And for me, even when
yeah,
I didn't really have an understanding of
yeah,
who or
yeah.
what God was, I that was a practice that I'd always had since childhood.
Mm,
And so, regardless of where I was in my spiritual journey, even if I was like, I felt it was silly, it was like just coming to that practice of prayer in the evening has been kind of a lifelong thing for me. And then
wow,
coming back to Christian faith, I added prayer in the morning to prayer in the evening.
yeah, yeah,
So, and that honestly, just that action of opening and closing my day in prayer has been helps me stay centered a lot. I mean,
yeah,
I struggle a lot as I've shared, but I think, and then finding points throughout the day to just take moments of centering. When
mm,
I did my field work in seminary,
mm,
Kara Jones led our field work, and she raised a question that I find really helpful, and I come back to almost on a daily basis when I'm struggling with something, and
yeah,
now I might be getting angry and frustrated. She always asks the question, "What is God doing in this?" And so, like,
wow, yeah,
yeah, isn't that great? And so,
yeah,
like, um, if when I remember to do it and when I'm not getting caught up in tunnel vision, if I'm able to take that step back and be like, okay, where is God in this and what is God doing? And again, that gets back to that question of what's mine to take on and where am I taking on, where am I feeling like I need to be controlling and pulling and forcing, and
yeah.
kind of staying centered on, well, where is God in this and where am I trusting God in this and where's my work in it?
That's wow. That's so
Yeah.
good. That is so good. I like how you've taken the original question of what is God doing in this, and then you've added also just that you did it. You said, where is God in this? So,
Mm,
which is feel like, okay, can I see God at work here? And then in you
yeah.
seeing where God is, and then saying, okay, God, what are you doing? And
Mm-hmm.
then you saying, and then this follow-on question, okay, what am I meant to do? Like, wow,
Yeah.
that's It's just really, really good. Really good. I love that. Um, if people are used to listening to this, they're going to realize that when I get to the end question of what am I going to take from this, you're probably already guessing what I'm going to take from this session. But there we go. I guess then, in terms of we've looked at what's helping you, I guess my next question is, what are you discovering then through this about the wonder of who Jesus is, who the Father is, who the Spirit is? Like, what are you discovering about God?
Yeah, so it's, again, like I say, just that one question from seminary. If I could take, if I could say one thing that's been really valuable, and there's a lot that's been valuable in seminary, but what I'm discovering as I'm doing this practice of looking for God is when we talk about like God's intervention, it's like there can be a way of like thinking of God separate from the world, like God kind of hangs out, in the celestial realm. And then occasionally, if we ask hard enough, God might like pop in, and then before like, going back off to wherever.
Yeah.
But if I can stay in this mindset of like, well, where is God in this? It's like there's never a time or a situation where God isn't already in the midst. And when I've been coming to think about like God's intervention and how we call on God, the more I'm exploring this and being in community where we're exploring this together, at Oasis and other Christian communities, it's like what I'm discovering is I feel like it's less about like being like, okay, God, now come into this. And it becomes more about kind of discovering the ways that like we ourselves are creating barriers to what God's already doing and opening ourselves to be like, well, if God's already at work in this, where is our participation? And how are we working through all these places in ourselves that are getting in the way of that, whether it's interpersonal conflicts or conflicts within ourselves or power systems, and the way the evil is working in power and good. And so it's really about, not God being like away and then popping in, but really how we're participating with God's redemptive work that's already happening everywhere. And that just like kind of blows my mind.
I can, man, this is just good. I think that last thing, God's redemptive work everywhere. Like just suddenly it changes the perspective on life. You suddenly realize, Jesus, you did say you've come to give us life and life in full. I wonder if that's that of like I get to suddenly realize, where are you at work at this point? And that can, as you said at the beginning, that can be painful. It can be painful. But that God's not absent in it, that he's involved with us. That's good. Thank you, Faith. That is so good. So I guess then, so that's what you're discovering about God. How is that then changing you as an individual? Like if we were to rewind the clock, this is what I've been saying to people like 6 months ago, I don't know, 12 months ago, and we were talking at that point, Faith, like what would you reflect on now and say, yep, this is how it's changing me? Like
So if I'm looking back 12 months ago, we'll go back a year. That would have been December of 2022. I would have been back in the United States for Christmas right now, actually.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I know, crazy to think about. But one of the things I've been working on specifically over the past several months and considering is my issue with my need to control and direct. And so just for various reasons, in the past, I've found my center through trying to control situations and being like, well, I need to be in charge of it. And that interferes with my ability to trust others and to work with others when I feel like I need to manage and control. And so, again, that comes back to like, how am I trusting where God is? What am I leaving with God without feeling like I have to take such a burden on myself to like force and control and direct? So it's kind of like finding the stream of God that's already existing and weaving through things rather than trying to be out on my own, like with a shovel at the side, like digging somewhere that isn't going to go anywhere.
I like that. I like that image. I think it's also just the wonder of it. What strikes me is just just to say thank you for your vulnerability in it, of just saying, yep, this is a thing. This is something what I've realized actually, there's this part of me that actually doesn't bring the life that I think there's there to be enjoyed. But actually in me relinquishing a bit more of the control, I'm realizing actually it allows me to see more of what God's doing. And just one, thank you for sharing that. But two, it's just provoking. Of just like, I don't want to, how often do I spend time, which is why I'm laughing, of just thinking, how often do I kind of spend time digging the track of thinking, I've got this. I did like this way. This is how it's going to look. Whereas, I don't need to pick up the shovel. I just need to say, oh yeah, God, what are you doing? Let's not trying to hold this too tightly, but just let go a bit and say, okay, God, where are you? What are you doing? It's really good. Oh, Faith, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Oh no, it's deep joy. And I know for me, I'm going to be considering, not a surprise on this one, what I've just said in terms of those 3 questions I've noted, like to be asking at different points, where is God in this? What is God doing? And what do I need to do? I think those are 3 questions I'm going to be reflecting on out of this, which is really good. How about you, my listening friends? What are you going to be taking from this and considering over this coming week? Lastly, I just want to say thank you for listening, and I pray you would know more of the wonder of living centered on Jesus this coming week.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the Living Centered podcast. New episodes are released every Monday, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do like and subscribe on your chosen podcast provider to receive them direct each week. Living Centered is produced by the team at Oasis Church in Birmingham, UK, and you can find out more and get in touch with the team via theoasischurch.com.